My name is Michael. I'm 32 years old, and I consider myself a pretty ordinary guy. I work as a manager at a small IT company and live in a cozy house in the suburbs with my wife, Caitlin. We met back in college at one of those typical student parties, where I accidentally stepped on her foot, and she laughed and said, "Well, Michael, you sure know how to make an impression from the very first second." That joke made me smile, and that's how we started dating. Caitlin was always the kind of person who drew attention, cheerful, witty, and independent. She loved reading philosophy, while I was into sports, and that sometimes made us amusingly different, but we complemented each other. I remember during our first date, she told me about her dreams, and I thought we would do so much together: build a house by the lake, travel, and simply live happily. But about a year ago, I started noticing changes. She smiled less often at home, stayed late at work frequently, sometimes even spent the night there. I tried not to make a big deal of it, thinking it was just a tough period. But one day, I caught myself looking at her phone when she was distracted, and my heart raced when I saw messages with Dylan, their jokes I didn't understand, and some warm words like, "You make my day better, I miss you." Dylan was her childhood friend, a guy from the next neighborhood, and they had gone to school together. I thought it was just friendship, but now it looked different. I remember seeing them laughing together in the kitchen, and Caitlin's look at that moment was different, not the same look she usually gave me. One evening, I decided to be honest with myself and asked, "Caitlin, what's going on between you and Dylan?" She sighed, put down her phone, and looked me straight in the eyes. "It's just friendship, Michael, don't complicate things." But I could see her words didn't match her eyes. She turned away, and I saw tears glistening in her eyes, tears I had never seen before. After that, things only got worse. Caitlin became cold, sometimes quietly sad, and our conversations became rare. I tried to surprise her. I booked a small cabin in the mountains where we would celebrate our 4th anniversary. I imagined us sitting together by the fireplace, reminiscing, laughing, and feeling again what once connected us. But when I told her about the trip, her reaction felt like a knife to my heart. She listened silently and said, "Michael, what if I go on this trip with Dylan? He recently opened a resort on the coast, and he wants me to help him organize things." At that moment, I felt small and useless. She looked at me like I was someone from the past. During that vacation, I saw how she lovingly and joyfully sent him photos, sunsets, beaches, their conversations full of laughter and a light spark of flirting. It felt like I was just a shadow she had pushed to the background of her life. I struggled for a long time to find the strength to understand what to do next. Inside me was a mix of pain, betrayal, and confusion. I wanted to scream, accuse, demand explanations, but I was afraid of destroying what we had. All I wanted was clarity, either to get her back or learn to live without her. Michael hadn't seen Caitlin for almost 3 weeks. Every day stretched endlessly, filled with a growing silence that neither of them knew how to break. Their once lively conversations had dwindled into cold, clipped exchanges, leaving Michael feeling more alone in their shared apartment than he ever had before. One late evening, Michael was still at the office, burning the midnight oil to finish a project. The city lights blurred behind the rain-streaked windows as his phone buzzed quietly on the desk. It was a message from Caitlin. "I'm going away for a few days. Need some space. Please don't try to find me." The words were short, but they hit him like a punch to the gut. Driving home through the deserted streets, Michael's mind raced with questions and doubts. Where was she going? Who was she running from, or was she just running away? He barely noticed the small suitcase sitting by the door when he finally stepped inside. It was neat, packed carefully, a silent testament to her leaving. For days, he tried reaching out. Calls went unanswered. Texts were ignored or met with vague replies. Michael felt the walls closing in, the silence stretching wider than ever. His heart was a heavy stone, sinking deeper with each passing hour. Finally, he decided he couldn't wait any longer. He had to see her. Without telling anyone, he got in his car and drove towards the coastal town where Caitlin was staying with Dylan, a mutual acquaintance who had offered her a place to stay. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, and Michael's hands gripped the steering wheel tight. Rain began to fall again, the rhythm of the droplets against the windshield matching the pounding of his heart. When he reached the quiet seaside resort, the air smelled of salt and loneliness. The small cottage where Caitlin was staying was dimly lit, surrounded by shadowed pines swaying softly in the night breeze. Michael's knock was tentative but urgent. The door opened slowly, and there she stood, pale, tired, eyes that looked like they had cried too much, but still the same Caitlin he loved. The moment was fragile, hanging between them like a delicate thread. "Michael?" Her voice was barely a whisper, trembling with uncertainty. He stepped inside, the warmth of the room contrasting with the chill in his chest. "We need to talk," he said simply. They sat opposite each other in the small living room, the silence stretching before Caitlin finally spoke, her voice breaking the quiet like a soft confession. "I didn't plan for this to happen," she began. "I thought I just needed a break, some space to clear my head. But things got complicated. Dylan has been a support, someone to talk to when I felt lost. But it's not about him. It's about me, about what I've been missing, and what I'm afraid to lose." Michael watched her carefully, seeing the vulnerability beneath the surface. He felt the sharp edge of betrayal, but also a flicker of hope. "So, what do we do now?" he asked gently. "I don't know," she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "I need time to figure out if we can still be US. But I want to try, if you do." For hours, they talked about fears, hopes, mistakes, and the fragile possibility of forgiveness. The night wore on, but for the first time in weeks, Michael felt a thread of connection reweaving itself between them. The morning light filtered softly through the thin curtains, casting gentle shadows across the small cottage. Michael woke before Caitlin, staring out at the gray sea that stretched endlessly beyond the window. The waves rolled in quietly, carrying with them a strange sense of calm he hadn't felt in weeks. When Caitlin finally stirred, her eyes met his with a mixture of uncertainty and fragile hope. They didn't speak immediately, words felt too heavy after last night's long conversations, but the silence between them was no longer cold. It was waiting, like the calm before a storm might break, or the hush before dawn. Over breakfast, the tension slowly eased. Caitlin reached out, her hand finding Michael's across the worn wooden table. It was a small gesture, but to both of them, it felt like a lifeline. "I don't want to lose what we had," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I know we have to be honest, with each other and ourselves." Michael squeezed her hand, the ache in his chest softening just a bit. "I'm scared, too," he admitted. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe being scared means we still care." The days that followed were fragile steps toward rebuilding. There were no grand gestures, no instant resolutions, just quiet moments of shared laughter, tentative talks, and long walks along the misty shore. They spoke of the future, but only enough to promise to try. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft oranges and pinks, Michael and Caitlin sat side by side on the beach, the cool sand beneath them. "Do you think we can really make it work?" Caitlin asked, her voice barely above the whispering waves. Michael looked out at the horizon, then back at her. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I want to find out. With you." She smiled then, a small, genuine smile that reached her eyes, and leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time in a long time, they felt the fragile promise of a new beginning. It wasn't perfect, and the future was uncertain, but they had found their way back to each other. And sometimes, that's all that matters.